Homeworthy, I'm Fawn. Welcome to my Victorian home in Texas. Come on in, I'll show you around.
This summer, spend the hottest months of the year in style with Homeworthy as we visit the most extraordinary homes around the world. From the sun-soaked shores of the Hamptons to the classic beachfronts of Nantucket to the vibrant courtyards of Morocco, be sure to subscribe to Homeworthy's summer series to make every day feel like a vacation. You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
My name is Fawn Rumfield. I'm a historic homeowner, a design enthusiast, and a content creator. Welcome to my home. So we purchased a home 7 years ago. We knew we wanted something older. We didn't really have anything in particular in mind as far as architectural style, but this kind of was what we could afford at the time. We were first-time home buyers. We were in our 20s, and this house had been abandoned and no one had been living in it for a very long time except for cats, which is why we could afford it. And so this is what we landed with. We fell in love with it. It's a Queen Anne Victorian. It's built in 1896 in a really historic area. And we knew immediately, like, this is the one for us. And we were definitely blinded by optimism because it was a mess. It was disgusting. And probably even our realtor was like, oh, are you guys sure? We were also pregnant with our first child. So we had like 3 months to like get it in livable condition because it really was not in livable condition. But we powered through and we made it. Like 2 weeks before we had our first child, we were like, okay, this is good enough, we're gonna do it. So yeah, we've been here 7 years now, and it's just been consistently working on things ever since. Right away, we just came in and ripped out everything that was not serving us, and we discovered the original floorboards. So we refinished the floors, which was an incredible find. They were covered under layers of plywood and linoleum and carpet, so that was really fun. We just basically, you know, drywalled everything, got it to like a white box, and then it was livable. And then from then on, we kind of went room by room and kind of revisited each space one at a time to kind of really make it into what we wanted to. There's still more to do, but we're kind of at the end now where we're like, okay, we did it. Like, we have made this house our home. Welcome to the entry of our home. This is a really small space, but it has a lot of architectural elements that are really special. One of my favorite things about our entry is this newel post. It's made with pine, which is pretty standard here for our area of Texas. When we bought the house, it was painted, and so I didn't know what was under there, and I stripped all the paint off of the railing and the newel post. Maybe one day I'll do the rest of it. We'll see. It was a lot of work, and so I, did part of it. But it's so beautiful, and it's not stained. It's just pine with shellac on it, which would be the traditional finish. This is a gallery wall of all of our ancestors. We pestered all of our family members to find photographs and send them to us so we could get copies. And I framed them all in thrift store frames that I found at estate sales and thrift stores and just collected over time. And put the whole thing up. And I kind of like how they're a little bit like tilted and wonky, and they're all different because I feel like it looks collected over time. And there's like about 200 years worth of history here, both my husband's family and mine. So this wall is really special to us. My kids love like walking up and down the stairs. They're all named after somebody on the wall. And so they're like, where's the picture of so-and-so or so-and-so? So this is really special to us. And then we also have in this room, is the only place that we kept it, is our original shiplap. I know that there's been, conversation about, is shiplap out of style? I'm here to tell you, No, it's 129 years old. It's timeless. When we bought this house, it had been upholstered in the 1990s. So it was like padded and with like fabric like stapled to the wall, and we ripped all that off, and all of the original shiplap was underneath. It was already painted, so we just painted it white. And I think it's just a really fun way to honor like the builders of our home. You know, this traditionally would not have been exposed. Historically speaking, in the Victorian era, they would use this and then they would put a muslin fabric over the top of it to create a smooth surface, and then wallpaper. But I think it kind of honors the people who built our homes. So we kept it in this space right here. So another thing that we did here in the entryway was, when we bought the house, this was covered in another flooring type, and we pulled it up to discover the original pine floors, but they were in pretty rough shape. And we weren't sure we were going to be able to salvage them. And I kind of went back and forth, like, are they going to be salvageable or not? And if they were not, our plan was to do a tile in this harlequin pattern. But when we started the work on them, we started sanding them to see if we could salvage them. We decided, okay, it's not worth taking these out because we can use these. And so I still was stuck on that harlequin look. And so I did the same with wood stain rather than tile. So I created a border around the edge with wood stain, and then we taped off the floors in that harlequin pattern to create this look. So I kind of got the best of both worlds. I got to keep the original material and still do the design that I was originally intending. Over here are a couple of paintings. This top one is just, it is an original, but it's just one that I found vintage at a thrift store for like $7. It's a point of pride for me on how cheaply I can find good deals. This one here is from my husband's uncle. He was an avid collector of all sorts of things, and it's blue bonnets, which we love our blue bonnets here in Texas. And so I thought, when he passed away, you know, we were given the opportunity to have a few of his things in our home, and this is one of the ones I was like, you know, this is like a nod to Texas without being too like in your face Texas. And then over here, these are just some green pastoral scene plates. My grandparents had a set like this when I was a kid, and then I remember every time we went to my grandparents' house, we would eat on these green plates, and these aren't theirs, but I found them at the thrift store, and I just had to have them because they reminded me of like visits to my grandparents' house. So next we're gonna head into the living room right behind. So this is the living room in our home. We don't have space for a separate formal living room and then like a more family style den. So this is both. I wanted it to feel pretty formal since this is the first thing that guests see when they come into the home, but I also wanted it to be comfortable because this is where we, you know, watch TV and the kids play and that sort of thing. So pretty much everything here I found via Facebook Marketplace. All of the furniture, the rugs, everything. All of the little knickknacks are secondhand. When we first purchased the home, the walls in here were also upholstered. So we tore all of that out and we put drywall in here because the shiplap was not in very good condition. These built-in bookshelves are my pride and joy. I designed them and my husband built them. I helped a little bit, but he did most of the work on this one. So we wanted something to be able to show all of our treasures and books and things. I mean, let's be honest, it's mostly just thrift store finds, but we built all of it and it took us months and months, and not a single thing in this old house is level from front to back, from side to side. So getting this all here was a feat of geometry, but it looks so good and I love it. I feel like this totally makes the whole space. So this is actually a pretty small living area. So, and with it being like kind of a pass through from one room to another, the furniture, I needed to kind of have it to where guests can visit with each other, but I didn't want to block off the flow of traffic. And so we put two couches kind of facing each other, even though one of them is directly under our TV. I love the look of a couch in front of a wall of bookshelves, and our TV right here, this is one of those art frame TVs, but it's so cozy to like sit here and snuggle up under like a blanket with like all of your books. You know, you just feel like Belle and Beauty and the Beast, like just such a cozy little spot. And it just kind of flows traffic naturally from here straight into some of our other our dining room and our kitchen from here. So this right here is a table that somebody actually gave me. So this is, you know, one of those really great finds because I spent $0 on it. But people, friends of mine who know that I like antiques and old stuff, when they have, you know, a grandmother who's getting rid of something, they're like, hey, maybe Fawn will want this. And usually, yes, I do. This I picked up at a flea market. Everything really just came from like vintage and antique shops, thrift stores, flea markets. I find that I get a lot of smaller items from thrift stores and antique shops and that sort of thing, and then larger items I usually purchase on Facebook Marketplace. That seems to be my easiest go-to for secondhand shopping. So over here, there's just, you know, a little small vignette moment. These are, I don't know if you've ever seen these before. These are in the 1980s. Avon made a collection of historical figure busts, but they're actually like perfume. So there is actually some vintage perfume inside of here, but we just, you know, so far he hasn't spilled yet, so we just set him right there and pretend there's nothing inside. And these, I love equestrian art. I got these in an estate sale that actually, the house was just a couple of doors down from me, so I love that they're not far from where they originally lived. But these kind of equestrian, British feeling prints are some of my favorites. This right here is actually where our house originally stopped. So our home was built in 1896. In 1960, it underwent a really large renovation and they added this back portion on. And so where this cased opening was originally the back of the house. So everything that you see after this point was added on, which it's still pretty old, 1960, but it is kind of the new part of our house. So this space right here kind of is connected to the living room, but because there's a cased opening, it's kind of like a transitionary room from our dining and our living and into our kitchen. But this is like the most frequently passed through room, and it just has like a great floor. My kids will like sprawl out with their toys or their board games or floor puzzles. I knew that I wanted to have a little bit of furniture. It wasn't quite big enough for a large table, but I wanted to put something small here on this wall. So I put this secretary desk here, and I love a secretary desk, especially if you don't have space for a full office in your home, because you can use this as a desk and then you can just close it up at the end of your workday. So I am not going to open this and show you, but it is very messy in there, but I can just close it and hide all of it, and then you're good to go. You know, it's right out in the main living area, but it's functional and really beautiful as well. And then this here is a painting. We call her Princess Pauline. And what this is a digital download from, I believe, the Met. I use both Smithsonian and the Met, and they have all of their public domain art is free for in-home use to download. And so I just downloaded a file of it and then had it printed and just framed it here. And so that's a really affordable way to get large scale, like traditional style art in your home for a really, really low price. Those are wonderful resources to use and free, available to the public. So next we'll lead into our formal dining room. Welcome to our dining room. This is definitely the most formal room in our house, and I did that intentionally. I wanted it to feel like a Victorian era home dining room would, which was very formal. That's, you know, the most fancy place in the home. This wallpaper here is something I installed myself. This was the first room that I ever wallpapered, and I realized how easy it was. Now I want to wallpaper everything because truly it's not that hard at all. But it is kind of a nod to the era of Victorian times, which is when our house was originally built. You'll see a lot of like florals during that time. And so I chose something that still is kind of modern, but still has a little nod to the history of our home. And again, over here, I have, these are also like prints that I downloaded, public domain art, and they're just architectural prints. I have actually 2 of them, identical matching, but I created these covers. These are just basic bookshelves. They house our records and some of our kids' stuff under here, but I sewed these covers for them, and it kind of creates a more formal look rather than just a square bookshelf, which is all that it is, but for very inexpensively, I kind of made it look a little bit more high-end than it originally was. Over here, more thrift store finds. I found this original painting actually very recently, and I thought it was perfect for like spring and summer. So I kind of like to change out the mantle for the different seasons, so this I thought was a good one for the time being. The fireplace mantle is not original to the house because, like I said, this part of the house was added later, but it is a from the proper era. So a previous homeowner salvaged it from somewhere else and installed it. The tile on the hearth I installed myself. It was the first time I'd ever tiled, but I have watched enough YouTube videos to convince myself that I could do it, and I did. Did I do a great job? I don't know, but I did it, so. And then here are the other set. I love a like pairing moment of 2 identical pieces, and this was a really, really inexpensive way to achieve that look without spending, you know, a ton of money. The chairs and table are all secondhand. The chairs I love. I found them on Facebook Marketplace from an older couple who was downsizing, and they had moved from England years and years ago, and they were getting rid of them. So they originally came from England, and then they were used here in Texas for a long time before they came to me. And I was like, I'm not gonna recover them. I love them exactly as they are, and they are just so fun. I love the like coloring and pattern on that. And the light fixture here is one that I found at a flea market. It's very heavy, and I carried that thing like a mile, like in my arms throughout this flea market, just trying to get to my car. But it was very worth it because I paid only $20 for it. So that is a really fun find that I'm super proud of. This is a really beautiful 19th century chest. A friend of mine was moving and she couldn't take it with her, and so she asked if I wanted it, and I immediately did. It's beautiful. I love the wood grain pattern on the drawer fronts and like the wooden keyhole spots here. This is just like the perfect addition to this room. I think a lot of people, when they're decorating an era specific home, they think that they have to use things that are only from that era. I really like to mix things up, both older and newer from the era that your house was built in. So this is definitely older than 1896, which is when our home was built, but I think it works still to kind of give it that fun mix of old and new. In here, this is my collection. I love blue and white. I am not very particular about different types of makers and collections. I am just drawn to what I find and what I like. So some of them are more inexpensive, lesser quality, and some of them are actually very old antiques. It's kind of a mix of high and low, but I love the look of all of them gathered here in this little space. I think against the black, it just really pops, and this is like my very favorite thing to collect is blue and white vases and plates and that sort of thing. So the black trim in here, I originally started with just the fireplace. I had the mantle painted black. And then when I went to wallpaper the space, I was like, I feel like if I did the trim and everything else black too, it would look really sharp and really cool. So the mantle was already, it had been that way for years. And so I just used that same color paint and just took it everywhere. And I really, really am glad. I think it's really, really bold and dramatic and still kind of fun. So next we'll head over to the kitchen. Welcome to our kitchen. This is something that we remodeled just a couple of years ago, and we had a lot of time to plan for it and prep for it, and so I really took my time living in the space, figuring out exactly how it would function for us. And I took a lot of inspiration from the Victorian era as far as how I wanted the kitchen to feel. At that time, kitchens were not what they are today, where they're equal in formality to the rest of the house. At that time, the kitchen was relegated to the back and it was a working space only, and you would see much simpler trim, if any at all. You would see much more rudimentary materials in a kitchen space, and I kind of wanted to stay true to that as much as I could. And so some of the things that I did was incorporated a lot of unfitted pieces, meaning not cabinetry that's affixed to the wall. So like this giant hutch here is one of my really fun finds that I found for this space when we were planning. And I have like baskets on top that kind of store all of my infrequently used kitchen items. And we use this daily. You know, this is like some of it's like pretty items, and then some of this is like our actual pantry items. This right here is my collection of Better Homes and Gardens cookbooks. I have almost all of the editions. I have some really special ones, but they do change, and so every time they release a new edition, and they've been doing it for almost 100 years, so there's a lot of different versions of them. I try to collect all of them, but I still have a few to get. This one is one of my favorite ones. It's like a gold edition, and this was like a special one to celebrate 10 million copies sold. They released like a special edition gold one. We found that while we were on like an anniversary trip antiquing, and I was like, oh my goodness, it's perfect. I have to have this. So yes, so this is a really fun collection of things here. So then this is another unfitted piece. We opted to do a freestanding island rather than doing cabinetry with the standard countertop. This piece of furniture is my most prized possession. I will haunt my children if they don't want it after I'm gone. It is the most beautiful piece of furniture I've ever found. It is either a seamstress's table or a library table. I'm not sure what its original use is, but it is a true antique, and we do like all of our kitchen prep here. It's so wonderful to have this space. We use this for everything. I rarely even use the kitchen counters when I'm actually like cooking and prepping. I have everything over here, and my husband does too. Over here, we opted to not do any upper cabinets. Again, to kind of give that feel of that older style. We took the traditional subway tile right up to the ceiling and all the way around, so the whole wall is covered. That was something that I had seen in other historic homes of the era, and so I wanted to replicate that here. We only did lower cabinets, and then I had a shelf here that I had found from an antique store to kind of put all of our daily dishes and that sort of thing, with the plan being that if our needs changed, we could move things around. And that was kind of how kitchens operated previously, is that they were flexible. You could move things, move a table here, move a table there, and things were always in flux. And so that was the plan with having a shelf for our dishes and that sort of thing. This little area over here, we put one open shelf up top. This is a piece of wood that came from under our stairs. We had to do some structural work to support the integrity of our stairway, and so we had to remove a few boards from the underside of it to do that, and this is one of them, and we turned it into a shelf here in the kitchen. And this right here, this is actually my oldest Better Homes and Gardens cookbook. This is the 1930 edition. It actually, people don't know this, but they actually didn't used to be red and white check. They actually started out as green. And so that one's a really fun one because it's like one of the most original ones that I have. One of the things that we did to kind of give it a historically inspired feel was we chose the 1-inch hexagon floors. And this is one of the things that we did actually hire out. We do a lot of work ourselves, but most of the kitchen work we hired out. And the tile guys were so gracious with me because I chose 2 separate colors of tile and then had them lay a border around the entire edge of the room. And then they came back and laid the white tile throughout the entire area. And then, and this is where they were truly so kind, I went through with a pencil and I counted individual tiles, and I crossed out which ones I wanted to create this little pattern here, and they went one tile by one tile and like pulled them out and then placed in the black ones to create this tile, which is, I found from a historic catalog of tile patterns. So it's inspired, but it is new and modern. And then this over here is, I wanted to really downplay the refrigerator. It is a modern kitchen, but you know, I didn't want the refrigerator to stick out like a sore thumb. And so we color matched the fridge to the pantry cabinets surrounding it. I just wanted it to kind of blend in a little bit. We couldn't afford full panel cabinetry for the refrigerator, and so we did this instead, which is kind of like a happy medium, but it kind of just blends nicely with the green cabinets, and I love a green accent. So this is a drop pan lighting fixture. It is from the Victorian era. It is salvaged from another home, and we installed it here over our sink, and I love it. Kind of gives an older feel to the kitchen. We also have another salvaged lighting fixture that is over our breakfast nook over here. This one is more of that schoolhouse style fixture. This is probably 1920s era, but again, I like to mix and match styles and time periods. So I thought this one was perfect for over the breakfast nook. Everything here was sourced secondhand. We found this built-in, well, it wasn't originally built in, but we found this and it was too big for our space. So we cut it down, and then to hide the like imperfections in the back after cutting it, we installed a beadboard, and then we repeated the beadboard elsewhere in the kitchen to kind of tie it together. And this table I found on the side of the road. It was like dusty and crusty and gross looking, but a neighbor had it just listed out in her front yard with a sign that said $20, and I was like, I'll take it. And so I cleaned it up and refinished it, and I mean, it's definitely an antique. It's over 100 years old without question, and I think it really adds some charm to this space. The chairs also, I wanted this space to feel a lot less formal than the dining room. I didn't even repaint them. The lady who sold them to me was like, I'm so sorry, the paint is wearing off. You'll have to repaint them. And I was like, no, I want them to feel old and worn. So I kept the chipping paint along the top because I wanted it to feel like something time worn and used over time. So I have a lot of, like I said, I love to collect blue and white. So these are some of my collection here. I also have more up above the window over here. These are some of my favorites. It's hard to choose which ones you love the most to display, and I have way more than I have displayed in my home. I need to pare down the collection, but I just love them so much. So this is like one of those quirky old house things. We have a set of spiral stairs that lead up into one of the bedrooms upstairs. This was actually built and installed in the 1970s. I was lucky enough to meet a woman who grew up here, and her dad, actually the homeowner, made these himself and put them in. And we thought that we would get rid of them when we remodeled the kitchen, but honestly, we just like them, and so our kids enjoy them, and it's like one of those quirky old things. So it grew on us over time, I would say. And then I will lead you over here to our laundry room, which this is the only change that we've made to the floor plan of our house. So this is the only space where we've added walls, and we haven't taken down any walls. So this is the only floor plan change. This doorway right here was listed for free on a Facebook Buy Nothing group, and it was like painted wildly, and I stripped all the paint off and restained it, and we put this reproduction Victorian hardware on it to kind of make it look older than it is. And I wanted something that was going to still let light pass through into the kitchen because we were walling off a couple of windows. So we did this French door here, and then a lace curtain to kind of filter through some light, and then it leads into our laundry room. Here in the laundry room, we originally did not have any designated space for laundry in the home, so when we renovated our kitchen, We added these walls to create a little laundry room, mudroom, and we added all of this beadboard. I did all of this myself, all of this paneling, and the wall of pegs and the bench, and kind of this is our go-to space for laundry, but also kids' backpacks and towels and shoes. Like, this is the landing space for our kids when they come in the back door. What I did up at the top was I used this wallpaper, which an interesting thing about this is when we purchased our home, the garage was full of random house items. We had lighting fixtures and doors and random trim pieces, things that had been used in the house at some point, and somebody just saved for, somebody ever wanted to use it again. And I found a box full of wallpapers, and there was like a half a roll of this right here. And I looked online to see if I could find any more of it or see who the maker was, and I could find nothing. But I wanted to use it, and there was only like half of a roll, and so I was like, I'm gonna risk it and hope and pray that there's gonna be enough of this wallpaper. And I just went for it, and sure enough, it was just the right amount. With like 3 inches to spare, I used the wallpaper. So it's really special. I don't know where this was in the house ever previously, but it's really special to like bring something back that was here during another family's time here in the home. So my style, I really would say, is led with history and architecture first and foremost. I am a lover of color. I like things to be fun, colorful, also traditional, but within the framework of what this house is. If I was living in like a mid-century house, it would probably veer a little bit differently, because I think it's really important when you live in a historic home to let the architecture lead your design decisions, and then you can kind of play with that balance between formal and fun within the framework of that. So I don't know, I just really love history and historical design, and so I always am pointed to that first, and then that kind of leads my design decisions. I have been inspired a lot by, this is gonna sound so silly, but just by watching like historical dramas that are set in historic houses, both in Britain and in the US, and then traveling to some, historic homes, historic home museums. The Biltmore was a really big one for me. We went and visited, and I was taking like close-up pictures of not just the rooms in general, because the design is beautiful, but like of the tile profile in the kitchen, or like the molding angles that they put it on. I am very interested in like set design for TV and movies, and I think that there's a lot of inspiration that can be drawn from that for how we decorate these historic houses today. So next we're gonna head upstairs to the bedrooms. So here is our primary bedroom. This room is not very large, and it has a lot of windows and doors, so it really presented itself some interesting challenges when we were trying to figure out furniture placement and where to put things, because there are so many doors in this space. So one of the things that I did to kind of problem solve around the furniture layout was I created this half tester canopy to kind of block off this entire wall. So this is a traditional 4-poster, I think it's called a rice style bed. I love the height of the like finials up here. It really like draws the eye upwards, and especially here with the headboard, it like creates this focal moment underneath the tester canopy. The ceilings in this room are not as tall as the ones downstairs, so drawing your eye upward kind of gives the illusion that the ceiling is taller than it actually is. This is something that I found just at a thrift store. I really have a soft spot for architecture and architectural prints, and so this was one of the first things that I found, and this brown mat kind of was the inspiration for the color scheme for the rest of the room. So everything kind of flowed from this art print and the mat on it, and then I found other things. These curtains, both sets of curtains, were just Facebook Marketplace finds, but I intentionally matched them to that inspiration. And I wanted this room to feel very serene and soft. Most of the other rooms in our house have a lot of color, and this is the one place I wanted it to feel muted and calm. And so this here is an antique piece of furniture. This over here is one of our only original stained glass windows. I don't know how many we originally had. Traditionally, with these style of homes, something that people would do when they built their homes is only put stained glass on the street-facing windows as a cost-saving measure. So from the street, it would look a little bit more elevated. So this is a street-facing window, and it has its original stained glass. This is one of the few that we have. So it's in rough shape, but we love it. So here's a really good example of something that I like to play with, which is pattern mixing. Even though the color palette in here is all very soft and pretty muted in a similar color scheme, I mixed, something more geometric with something a little bit more organic here. You kind of can play with scale and pattern type, and I'm always looking to blend different styles together, and so that's one of those examples. And then I also really love these, again, are just little art prints that I have framed, and they're in really small frames where you would expect something much larger here. I think it's really fun to play with the scale. So in other spots in the room I have larger scale art, but here it's just like a little teeny tiny fun difference in sizing. So if you were wondering, this is where the spiral staircase leads to it. So it comes directly up into our bedroom, which is very convenient for me because the steps from my pantry for a midnight snack to my bed are very minimal. Straight up the spiral staircase, I can get a little snack, bring it up here. And then another quirky little old house thing is all of these rooms are connected. So this leads directly into our girls' room this way. Here is our girls' space. Our girls are 2 and 4, which is a super fun age. We just recently redid this room for them after having been the nursery for several years. So I found 2 headboards that were very similar, but in different locations. I found them separately, and I painted them this pretty blue color to match. The headboards themselves are not the exact same, but tying them together with color really helps. The headboards, I always say, are sisters, not twins, just like my girls who are 2 and 4, and they get asked if they're twins all the time, and I say, nope, they're sisters. All of the bedding here was found at various different places at various different times. I kind of saved things up over time when I was planning this room, and it's all from estate sales or secondhand finds. The embroidered pillow, this was an old quilt that was cut and ripped and torn, and there was only a few salvageable pieces, and so I made them into these pillows for their beds here. And then the bed skirts as well were an old vintage sheet that I created into bed skirts for the beds. Something about a little girl's room with 2 matching twin beds is just quintessential childhood. So I really love this space. It also has 3 windows on 3 sides, so at any time of the day or night, it has the best light. In this room, I used paint to create this striped wall. It took me absolutely forever. I really don't recommend doing it. I saved a lot of money, but I did lose my sanity. I used painter's tape, and I taped the entire room, and I used a little laser level, and I was placing tape. It took me days just to get the tape up, and then I painted it the pink to create the stripes, which my girls asked for when we were kind of coming up with themes for the room. They asked for pink and green and stripes. So we did pink and white stripes on the wall, and I carried that pink up onto the ceiling as well. And then we did this really fun green for the trim, and it's just a really happy space that they had a say in, so they feel some ownership over it because they were involved in picking the paint colors and that sort of thing. This dresser right here actually belonged to my mother-in-law when she was young, and then it was my husband's when he was growing up, so he used it for his entire childhood, And now it's in here. It's our girls' dresser. It has been various finishes and paint, and this most recent one, I stripped it all down and restained it to be kind of this dark color, which is like a very grounding color for this room, which is like very bright and airy. So my girls are the third generation to use this dresser, and so it's so special for them and for me and for all of us to like have it be continued to be in the family. We recently got into gardening, and so these were flowers that like my girls grew from seed, and so they're like all in bloom right now. And I was like, we'll decorate with your own garden flowers. They're so sweet. They like go out and take care of the garden and water their flowers. So I decorated with a little bit of their things. And neither of my girls are in school yet, and so they're with me all day. So they're like my little thrift store buddies. And so all of these little like tchotchkes and porcelain things are things that they've picked out themselves, that they have found little treasures at thrift stores and that sort of thing. They take really great pride in like finding cute little things. So all of these are their little finds. This here is a little antique side table, and it's actually perfect for them because they're still pretty small. So this mirror here is kind of their height, but traditionally what it would have been used for is to put a candle right here and reflect light. So it would have been used probably pre-electricity. And so this was like a little bit of a trick to kind of create more light than there would have originally been. But my girls just use it as like a little dressing table because, you know, they're fancy little 2- and 4-year-olds. This here is a little doll quilt that my great-grandmother made for me when I was a little girl. One Christmas, she made all of her great-grandkids each doll quilts, and I have saved mine all of these years, and now my girls play with it, which is like really special to me to have that. So hopefully they keep it and pass it down. We'll see, I don't know. And then this is just a little vintage dollhouse that we found one year for my daughter's birthday, and we like fixed it up and painted it for her. And unknowingly, it matches this room perfectly. But those are their colors, pink and green. So everything here, pink and green. And then next we'll head over to my son's room, which is also really fun. So here in my son's room, we have like a really dark masculine, still colorful, but dark masculine kind of feel. We added all of this beadboard and trim, and we also added up at the top that picture rail. And that is a period appropriate type of molding, and it has a special curve at the top. So you lay it on the wall directly rather than up a ceiling, and you can use these special hooks to hang things up over it. And so that is how the Victorians would have hung their artwork rather than nailing it into the wall. So we did that here in this space, so all of the artwork hangs from the picture rail rather than into the wall directly. This was a stencil that I did, so I just chose 2 kind of different colors and stenciled the whole thing. And when I did that, I used a projector with a grid, so I just projected a grid up onto the wall to keep my lines straight, so that across the whole thing, everything was like nice and steady and straight lines. These are silhouettes that I had of my older 2. When I first decorated this room, my older daughter was sleeping in here as well. And so she has since moved out into the girls' room, but her silhouette's still in here because my son wanted it to stay. So the theme for this room was kind of boys, equestrian, dogs, horses. Those are kind of some of the things that he was into at the time. So I let him choose some of the colors and the bed sheets and that sort of thing to kind of give him like ownership over the space. But he is 6, and so, you know, he's a 6-year-old boy, and so he picked out this little shelf. I brought him with me to an antique store to get a little shelf that he could put all of his little Lego creations on. You know, this house is still a family home where little kids live, and so I think it's an important thing to, like, you know, show kids do actually live here and let them kind of have agency over their own space. So that's his little prized possession area. Over here, so this dresser, like in my girls' room, this one was actually my mom's, and then it was mine growing up. And when I had my son, my oldest, I was like, I want that dresser. And so we brought it down. I grew up in New York, which is where my family still lives. So we drove it back down from New York down to Texas. So this is also a third generation dresser that my son is using. And it has been painted every color I can think of throughout the course of my life. It was in my nursery when I was a baby, and my mom just let me paint it pretty at free will. So I, as a child, painted it myself several times. And then this most recent time, I took everything off, including like a 1960s mid-century veneer. So I just took everything off, including the veneer, and refinished it in this like really pretty yellow pine color. And I think it balances well because it's such a light color with the dark features in the room. So more equestrian art. I have so much of it that I love, and so this was a great place to use it in my son's room. He really likes it as well. And then I really, again, love to play with the scale of patterns. So we have this really large gingham print with like this smaller scale. They're both geometric, but one is large and one is small. So always playing with like the size and the scale or the type of pattern to kind of blend everything together seamlessly. Honestly, my tip is just like, don't be afraid to like mix things up. Like even if they don't match, they'll go together. This is a bed that I found just on Facebook Marketplace. It's a metal bed. It's probably not super old, but it was so fun my son and I painted this together. His favorite color is red, and so he wanted a red bed, so we painted it together, which was like a really special memory. And also it like has a nice contrast against the wall color in here, so it brings in some fun colors as well as like a, vintage vibe to the room. My theory of kids' rooms is to have some variation of your like 4 main colors that you find in like a 4-pack of crayons. So your blue, green, yellow, and red. Some variation of all 4 of those colors I think really makes like a really fun and playful kids space. So if we count this as yellow, we have our yellow, our green, our red, and our blue repeated all throughout the room. Home to me is story, like the story of the people who are here. Who is your family? What kind of things are you interested in? What kind of things do you value? I think the way that we live in our homes can reflect who we are as people. And especially in a historic home, there are a lot of other families' stories that have come before me. I really consider myself not to be the owner of this house in a, since I really more consider myself to be the caretaker of this home. There have been so many people before me, and Lord willing, will be other people after me. And so my job is just to maintain and preserve this for future families, for, what story will they have when they're here in this time. So home is like the setting where your story takes place.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to go to homeworthy.com for exclusive content, shopping guides, and so much more.